Hello? Yeah, man, I can hear you just fine. You all right? Let me see. No, I see. I see us on the show. Yeah, I can hear us. Yeah, everything looks good. Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, all right. Well, yeah, man. All right. I mean, I can see us on here, so I mean, we look okay. I man. Yeah, 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 yeah. And you know what? I'm going to tell you something else too. The fact that we're on what show? What 28? 28. All right. So we started what right before the season or right at the season start. So we've been there for every week of the season, okay? So it's only fitting that we're here for the final week of the season. And we get to cap off the Tampa Bay Lightning who, you know, we might have to get into a impromptu end of the season power ranking. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. All right. But congratulations to Tampa Bay. Congratulations to John from Off the Wall Hockey. Dude, 6 grand in the followers for the subscribers. Yeah, buddy. That's amazing. So congratulations to that. Yeah, congratulations to Off the Wall Hockey for what 28 shows now. I mean, wow, this is awesome, dude. So thank you very much for all you do. Thank you very much for being a part of Steel Flyers, and really appreciate everything that you do, man. So thank you very much, and I can't wait to get into talking about hockey.
Oh yeah, me either.
I mean, come on.
I I'm so excited for this. I mean, it's interesting. I don't think it's really set in with me yet that the hockey season is over. Um,
Yeah.
like I just we've from January straight through, a couple nights ago, we had hockey all year long. And, it was every night during the regular season, almost every night during the playoffs. And now that it is just going to be a few months here without hockey, it's really, really weird. I don't know
Well,
if.
hold on a sec. Hold on. Time out. Time out. I hate to interrupt you, but I don't think we're going to go 3 or 4 months without hockey.
The rest of July, August, and September.
All right. Well, but what I'm trying to tell you is that we're going to have some things happen here in the next couple weeks.
Oh, we're gonna have a lot of off-season stuff, yeah, but
Oh,
there's
okay.
not gonna
Okay.
be a hockey game for a while.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No. 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 All
Yeah,
right. All
that's
right. All
gonna
right.
be weird. Not
Yeah.
watching hockey.
Because last year we were watching hockey at this time of the year.
Oh, we were
This was,
getting ready to actually.
oh yeah, we were getting
It came
ready
back
to.
the
Yeah,
end of July with
yeah,
the like
yeah.
exhibitions, and then right into the playoffs in August. Yeah, it's
So
just I feel the same way at the end of every season, but it's just gonna be it's weird when you have months straight of hockey and then it's just gone for a couple months. And
yeah,
yeah, there's
yeah.
tons of off-season stuff that's gonna happen. We're gonna be talking about that a lot throughout the off-season and doing all kinds of content on that, but. The actual games played on the ice ended with the Tampa Bay Lightning beating the Montreal Canadiens in game number 5 on Wednesday night. And Tampa Bay goes back to back. And man, what a run for them again. Andre Vasilevsky has been just looked absolutely unbelievable. That his goaltending performance these playoffs was one of the better goaltending performances that I can remember in recent memory. 2012
Yeah.
Jonathan Quick was a big time goaltending performance.
They're actually, I think I saw some comparisons to the Bernie Perrant there in the 76 for the 76 Stanley Cup with the Flyers because of how Bernie Perrant played. Like he just shut him down.
And well, the other thing with that is that when the Flyers won in 75 and 76, they got shutouts in the last game. And Andre Vasilevsky against Dallas last year got a shutout in Game 6, and in Game 5 this year he got another shutout. And the craziest thing with Vasilevsky, and we're going to talk a lot about him because he's your Conn Smythe winner this year as the playoff MVP, is that every single deciding game in the playoffs this year, every series deciding game, he shut out the opponent.
In every one.
All 4 of them. And the last one last year. So he has a 5-series streak now of shutouts in the series deciding game. I mean, you talk about playing your best hockey at the perfect time. I mean, for you to get a shutout in one deciding game is a big time game for a goaltender. He's done it in every single series for the past 5. It's unbelievable.
It is. And that's what makes this so amazing that he was also able to win the Conn Smythe, which this was the first time since Jonathan Quick's won it in 2012. Okay.
Wow. I didn't realize that. Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, to have a goaltender win, that in itself speaks huge volumes for how he played, especially in these playoffs. I mean, aside from the fact that he was up for the Vezina, which he should have probably won. But, well, you know how that rolls. Anyhow, he did get first team All-Star, which you don't win the Vezina, but you get first team All-Star.
Yeah.
Okay, but you can't take anything away from how he played in these playoffs, where exactly what you talked about, the shutouts in the deciding games. I mean, what more can you say about a goalie where it's like, yeah, this is the game we're going to win, and we're just going to close the door on you, and you're just not going to be able to do anything about it. Sorry.
Yeah. To repeatedly do that is incredible.
What's that?
To repeatedly do that is incredible.
I mean, how frustrating would that be as the opposition?
Oh, it'd be brutal. It'd be so frustrating to not be able to score in a series deciding game like that.
I know.
I mean, the final game of this series ended 1-0. I mean, if you're a forward on the other team whose job it is to score, that's a very frustrating feeling when you lose a game 1-0, and especially a series deciding game for the Stanley Cup.
I mean, when Montreal got into Tampa Bay, offense disappeared because Tampa Bay was able to match what everybody else was not able to do against Montreal. And they were able to outplay Montreal in almost every single game.
Yep.
Even the game that Montreal won. That's still, Tampa Bay probably could have still won that game.
Oh, it went to overtime. So yeah,
Well,
either team could have
okay.
won that.
Okay.
I did
So
think that Montreal pushed well in that game to at least get a win. But yeah, Tampa could. I mean, that overtime. Really, Tampa's power play is what let them down in Game 4. They had 5 power plays and didn't score on any of them, and they had that 4-minute penalty that to end the third period and start overtime, and they got nil
zip.
on the
Yep.
4-minute
Zip.
power play. So, if Tampa's power play comes through, this series ends up being a sweep.
Well, see, that's the pardon me. That's where Montreal came in.
Yeah.
Because their vaunted penalty kill did amazing because Tampa Bay coming into the series was 39.6% on the power play, leading the league in the playoffs at 39.6%.
That's an insane number.
Oh my god! But the Montreal penalty kill was in the 90 percentiles.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have that, and it just so happened that it worked out where apparently penalty kill's a little better than power play.
Yeah, Montreal's penalty kill was really good all series long. That was one spot where the Canadiens really did shine, was that they were able to limit Tampa's power play and limit the production that they could get in that final series. And that was one spot where Montreal did very, very well. And obviously, Gerry Price didn't play great at the start of the series, but in those last few games, he got back to playing, that playoff Gerry Price that we saw the earlier part of the playoffs.
Yeah.
Montreal's downfall was the fact that they just couldn't score.
I mean, seriously, that's what it was.
They just couldn't score.
No, they just couldn't. And that's not something that you need to be able to score, especially against a team like Tampa Bay. Because Tampa Bay is able to finish so quickly, because as soon as there's a turnover, Tampa Bay's down on your end scoring the goal.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And so you need to be able to capitalize on those kinds of things. And the exact opposite as well, where Montreal's power play was not really able to capitalize either. Not that they had a lot of chances.
Neither of the power plays got much going. It was overall a low-scoring defensive series. This series ended up being very defensive. Overall, very low scoring for the most part. The goaltenders both played. Vasilevsky was stellar the entire postseason. Price had a little bit of a shaky start to the series, but by games 3, 4, and 5, he was back to being Gerry Price. I thought the goaltending was very good for the most part. The team defenses were very good. It came down to just who was able to scratch away at some offense, and it ended up being Tampa Bay, and they obviously have on paper a more talented offensive group than what Montreal has.
Yeah.
They have the superstars. Montreal doesn't really have the superstars. And Tampa Bay was able to put enough pucks in the net and take advantage of those early games where Gerry Price wasn't at his best to get that series lead. And, they end up going home with a 5-game series win. But it's not like they lit it up offensively. I mean, that last game was 1-0.
Right, true.
Even Game 4 that Montreal won was 3-2. I mean, that's a fairly low-scoring game by NHL standards, and that was, it's almost as high-scoring as we saw. So, overall, both of these teams show that they're very good defensively, that they get great goaltending, and Tampa Bay was just able to get a few more pucks in the net compared to what Montreal was able to do, where Montreal's offense was just almost non-existent for much of this series, and that's what ended up costing them.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because Tampa Bay, throughout the first 2 rounds of the playoffs, were outscoring opposition for the most part. They were getting more goals in than, say, Florida.
Yeah, the Florida series was very high scoring.
They were getting more goals in than Carolina.
Yep.
Okay, so then they get up against Montreal, and I think a lot of people are not giving Montreal's defense very much credit. because that's why I think you only saw Kucherov was only held to 3 goals throughout the whole series.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I think he also had like 3 assists too. And Stamkos was held, and their big guns were held to minimal goals and minimal assists.
Yeah, Braden Point didn't have a goal in the finals. He did have a number. I think he had like 5 or 6 assists, but he didn't have a goal. They did a good job shutting him down. Montreal's defense overall, I think, was good.
Yeah,
They're a good defensive team, and they played
yeah.
very well defensively in the postseason and in the finals. It just came down to Tampa Bay being able to score a little bit more.
And the first 2 games, there were multiple hits. Like each team had, 50 some odd hits or whatever. So like
Oh
that in
yeah,
the
it was
first
a
couple
physical
games.
series. Those
But
two
as the
teams.
games wore on, like so the last game, or no, not the last game, but the game before last, there was only a each team only had like 36 hits,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whereas the first game combined, each team had like close to 100.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So it seemed like as the series wore on, the hitting kind of went away. The number of block shots went up, but it seemed like the hitting kind of went away. Now they stayed physical.
Yeah, the after the whistle stuff did not go away.
Right.
There was a lot of scrums in this series.
Oh, right. There's it seemed like there was a little bit of that rekindled I've played
Division.
you before.
Yeah, they're normally in the same division. Obviously, they weren't this year, but they're both normally Atlantic Division teams. And it didn't take long for them to kind of get at each other, and it stayed that way the entire series. They were playing like they did not like each other for sure. There was definitely a little bit of a rivalry built up there, and there usually is in the finals for sure.
Yeah.
And we saw
Yeah.
that this year.
Yeah, as Billy Clement would always famously quote them saying, "Is why you oughta." There was a
Yeah.
little bit of that. You know what I mean? There was a little bit of that in the game, and that was great. And that's what made this a good finals to watch. And yeah, okay, it was pretty much dominated by Tampa Bay to an extent,
Mm-hmm.
but you know what I mean.
Yeah, it wasn't the best finals we've seen in recent memory, but I don't think it was terrible. I enjoyed watching the games. I just think at the end of the day, Tampa Bay was a noticeably better team, more difficult team than the Montreal Canadiens. But Montreal deserves a lot of credit for just getting there. I mean, who thought that the Canadiens were going to be in the finals at the start of these playoffs?
We surely didn't.
I definitely didn't pick them, and that's on me. But I definitely didn't have them making it this far, and they had a heck of a run in the postseason. Obviously, they just came up a little bit short in the end, but they had a heck of a run, and they really made the most out of what they could do in these playoffs to get these wins. I think coming back from against Toronto the way that they did really kind of set them up to have a lot of momentum going forward, and they ran with it. And they're certainly, that's no easy thing to do all the time, but they ran with it, and they beat a tough, Winnipeg Jets team that was coming off a sweep of their own. And then they beat the Vegas in a series that I think a lot of people thought that Vegas was going to kind of just hammer them. And they end up beating Vegas. And, there's no shame in what the Montreal Canadiens were able to accomplish this year because, it really was a Cinderella run for them.
Let's start off with, let's go back to last year where
they beat Pittsburgh.
Yep. To make it into the playoffs and play the number 1 seed, which was Philadelphia. Now, they played Philadelphia pretty well.
Oh, yeah, that was a good tight series, absolutely.
Yes. All things considered, quite frankly, I think Montreal should have won. It's just that exactly the same thing happened with them this past series with Tampa Bay. It's just Philadelphia just put more pucks in the back of the net.
Mm-hmm.
Because there were times when, they outplayed Philly in the playoffs.
Yep.
So they had a lot of turnover in the offseason. made a lot of roster moves, a lot of switching, a changeover, and some things happened.
Yep.
And players left and players came in. All right. They started the season off and they blew the doors off the season the first 12 games.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Cool. Everybody's like, wow. All right. Montreal putting it together up there. Okay, cool beans. And then halfway through the season, they fire the coach. Huh? What?
Well,
they fire the. Okay.
They were back to being a 500 team.
Well, okay, right. So they were the lowest seed to ever make the playoffs. Right? And so, but look what happened when they got in. They pretty much, I would have to say, it wasn't Toronto's series to lose as to the fact that Montreal pretty much just got punched in the face for 3 games and said, okay, we had enough and we're done. And then they just housed, Winnipeg. That
wasn't even much of a series.
4 games. Bang, 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 quick. See you done. All right, next.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Now, that Vegas series, ooh, that was a little tougher.
Yep.
But they still won. They still beat the vaunted Vegas Golden Knights, whom everybody on the planet had picked to go to the finals.
Most people, yeah. Vegas was a heavy favorite in that series.
Yeah. And they took care of Vegas. So I don't necessarily feel that they were not out of their league, but Tampa Bay was just at another level.
Yeah, absolutely. Tampa was Tampa's Tampa. I mean, that team's loaded with talent, extremely well constructed.
And well coached.
Very well coached. John Cooper has absolutely solidified himself as one of the top coaches in the NHL. They're very deep. They've got depth up front and on the back end. Not so much in goal, but you don't need it when you have the best goaltender in the NHL. And as long as he's healthy, Vasilevsky's in there for Tampa Bay, and he's able to play a ton of games. He doesn't really seem to ever get tired. He's still only 26 years old, and as long as you got that guy in net, you have a shot to win. And then they've got depth everywhere else. And we saw Alex Killorn get injured in Game 1. He ended up missing the rest of the series for the Lightning. Matthew Joseph stepped right in and played extremely well. They moved Ross Colton up to the second line in Killorn's spot. Ross Colton, a rookie, ends up scoring the only goal of game number 5, the game-winning goal and the cup-winning goal. And then Matthew Joseph slid on the fourth line, and he played extremely well.
Yeah.
This team's deep. They've got, good defense. They've got an extra 7th defenseman in Luke Shen, who's a very good depth guy. Obviously, they've got, Chernak and Ruda and Savard. Savard coming in from Columbus ended up being a pretty big move for them to kind of solidify that top 6 on their defense. Tampa's the real deal. Now, they're going to have a different-looking team come next year. Because of their salary cap situation, obviously. And they're also going to lose somebody to Seattle, as every team is except for Vegas. But everybody's going to lose somebody for the most part to Seattle in the expansion draft. So, they've got to dump salary. We know that.
Yeah.
They're going to be a different looking team next year. But, I mean, they're still going to be a darn good team because they're so deep.
All right, well, let me ask you this. Riddle me this then, all right? I'm just going to rattle off 3 names, okay? And you just let me know what you think. So, Braden Point, Robbie Gord, and, what's the other guy's name? That's up for free agency, or not necessarily up for free agency, but might be one of the guys that, Sergachev or Chernak. Or Sorelli, either one of those 3. A list of those guys.
Somebody's going in the expansion draft.
Okay, and they're gonna have to move one of those guys' salaries or something, because even if they get a guy like one of those names that I just mentioned goes, in the expansion draft to Seattle, that's still not enough to put Tampa Bay compliant with the salary cap.
Yeah, no, they need to dump a decent amount of salary. Well, Barclay Goodrow and Blake Coleman are both unrestricted free agents. I think both of them will probably be elsewhere next season. As far as the expansion draft goes, now I'm looking over Tampa's roster right now. Kucherov, Stamkos, Point. Let's see. I would imagine looking at the roster, they're going to protect 7 forwards and
3D and 1 goalie. Yeah.
Yeah. So Kucherov, Stamkos, Point, Cirelli.
It gets tough, doesn't it?
Well, who you pick after that, because you can protect Gord, you can protect Killorn, or you can protect Palat. Well, that would actually give you 7 right there. And then Tyler Johnson would be left exposed.
Okay.
I would imagine that's probably the route that they're going to go.
Right. Okay, so
and then on defense, it's going to be Hedman and McDonough, obviously.
Obviously.
And, honestly, Sergachev would be my third guy that I protect. I would leave Chernak open.
Okay, all right. I'm with you. So I would protect Sergachev as well, and leave Chernak.
And Chernak's available, and Tyler Johnson's available.
Okay, so any one of those players gets removed off of the list, and that's still not enough. They still need to dump salary, is what I was trying to get at. So it doesn't really matter if they take any one of those players off the list.
Well, let's Marian Gaborik. What's his contract? Because if they get another year of LTIR relief for taking on Marian Gaborik's contract, I don't see him on here though, so he might be off now. So that's less. They're not going to be able to put him on LTIR if he's gone at this point.
Right.
Looking at cap friendly, he's not listed anywhere.
Right. So thank you to our crack research staff.
Yeah, cap friendly is great. It's gonna be interesting because Tyler Johnson's making $5 million a year. So let's say Tyler Johnson ends up in Seattle.
Okay.
That's $5 million off the cap. You also have, assuming Goodrow and Coleman both are gone.
All right.
You've got a decent amount opened up there, because right now cap friendly shows Tampa Bay as having a cap hit of just over 85 million. All right. But that's taking everybody off of the cap that's a free agent this coming offseason. So that also includes Jamel Smith, who he'll be in the AHL. I don't think he'd be an NHL cap hit. That takes off David Savard, who's a UFA. That takes off Luke Shen, who's a UFA. That Cal Foote is an RFA. Ross Colton, also an RFA. And they have no backup goaltender because Vasilevsky is the only goalie under contract that they have. So, yeah, they're going to lose more than just Tyler Johnson. And then, obviously, that would mean letting all of these UFAs go. They may also have to try and pull some sort of trade involving Alex Killorn or Andre Palat or Yanni Gord. One of those three guys, I think, would be the ones that they would want to possibly involve in a trade. I'm not losing Cirelli if I'm Tampa Bay. He's a guy that I'm not wanting to get rid of.
Exactly. But that's a lot of guys that's going to have to go away from the team that were integral to helping them to hoist the cup this year.
Yeah, there's no doubt they're not going to be as stacked as they were next season, but they're still going to have Kucherov. They're still going to have Stamkos. They're still going to have Point. They're probably still going to have Cirelli. They're going to have McDonough and Hedman, locking up the back end. Assuming they protect Sergachev, they're still going to have Sergachev. Like, you can take players off this team, and the biggest thing is they're still going to have Andre Vasilevsky in net. And when you have the best goaltender in the league in your net,
true, and Kucherov,
and you have one of the best forwards in the league in Nikita Kucherov, You have one of the best defensemen in the league in Victor Hedman. I mean, like
Yeah.
they're not going to
I
be
get it.
they're not going to be the juggernaut that they have been, but they're
Right.
still a playoff team in my eyes. I don't think
Yeah.
they're going to drop to the point where they're not a playoff team.
No, and I was watching the a network the other day, and a certain particular announcer was saying that he thought that they might even still be a favorite for the cup for next year. And I was like, well, you know what? Okay.
They could. There's so much of that core intact that they could, and depending on what you see, I mean, you've got some young guys there like Ross Colton, who really came onto the scene this year. I think Matthew Joseph is obviously going to have a regular role in the bottom six there next season. Mitchell Stevens will probably play a bigger role next season on the fourth line. And then if you look down to some guys that they have, in the minor leagues, somebody's probably going to get a look, or they might go the veteran route, kind of like what Toronto's done, where they've gotten, guys like Spezza and Thornton on really cheap,
deals.
Contracts because
same thing
veteran...
with Simmons too. They got Zimmer on a cheap deal too.
They could go that route where they get a veteran guy to fill out the fourth line on a $750K contract, something like that.
Yeah.
They've got Cal Foote on defense, who kind of got shuffled out of the mix when they traded for David Savard, but actually played a good number of games in the first part of the season before Savard came in.
Yeah.
So, yes, Tampa is going to take a hit this offseason. They are not going to be the same juggernaut team that they have been over the past 2 years. Next year, they're going to lose some players, but I still think they're going to be a really good team.
I have to agree with you, because they still, like you said, have that main core.
Yeah.
And as long as you have that main core, especially the key areas of goaltending, forward,
lockdown
defense.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Those are the kinds of things that still allows you the capability of, okay, we're going to lose a bunch of these guys and players, and we're going to be able to keep a couple, but we're going to lose a lot of them.
Yeah.
But it's going to be okay because we got the next crop of players coming in. They haven't mortgaged the farm per se to keep or whatever the players they have. They've drafted relatively well. This is going to be a pretty good draft for them.
They don't have a first or a second round pick in this year's draft.
Oh, they don't. Okay,
yeah.
Well,
No, they went all in on these past 2 years. I mean, well worth it. If you're gonna gonna walk away with 2 Stanley Cup wins, it's well worth it. But they went all in on these past couple years.
So it might be, slim pickings, but I agree. I still think they're going to be a decent team next year, no matter what happens, because of the fact that they're putting back that same core team.
They're good. I think they're absolutely going to be a good team. But the biggest thing that might end up really hurting this team is that integral third line is not going to be back next season. Coleman and Goodrow are both UFAs. Honestly, I don't think either of them are going to be able to be fit back under the cap. I don't think either of them are going to be back in a Lightning uniform next year. That third line was vital. I mean, that was their identity line. That was their line that started games a lot of the time.
Yeah.
That started periods. That came out and set the tone. They were great at forechecking. They chipped in very well offensively for a third line. They got a lot of offensive production out of them. They were extremely physical. I mean, Tampa played playoff style physical hockey largely because of that third line. Now, they also obviously had Pat Maroon on the fourth line, but that third line was so important to what this team was able to do each of the past 2 postseasons. That line is not going to be back intact next season. That, I think, might be the biggest loss for the Tampa Bay Lightning.
You know what? That's a heck of a way to look at that, because you're right. I think that was one of the top third lines
in a long time.
Yeah.
The only line I can think of, the only third line that really, I think, had that kind of impact was Pittsburgh's when they had the HBK line. When they had Hagelin, Bonino, and Kessel in their back-to-back runs in 2016 and 2017.
Okay.
That HBK line was huge for the Penguins. This Tampa Bay third line which never really got a nickname, unfortunately. But this third line for Tampa Bay, I think, was just as integral to their Cup run.
I have to agree. I have to agree with you 100%. And, you know, that's kind of funny that it's a third line. But you know what, though? See, maybe what our view of first, second, third, fourth line is maybe not what the team's first, second, fourth line. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, they might call it, you know, hey, this is the energy line, or they call it the center's line.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever the center's name is, this line out, this line out, this line out.
Yep.
You know, they don't really look at it as 1, 2, 3 because let's face it, most of these guys, you know, why would you start your third line? I mean, you know, look, if you say, all right, my best players are on the first line, my second best players are on the second line, my third best player, you can't do that.
Well, it goes by like offensive production. So the Point, Kucherov, Palat line was the first line. The Stamkos, Cirelli, Killorn line was the second line, and then this is your third line. Numbering lines is only a thing just you know to make things simple and be like line 1, 2, 3 on the depth chart, but it doesn't really mean a whole lot.
Right.
That was the line that started games and started periods for Tampa Bay. I mean, that was the line that set the tone.
Yeah. So that's why I'm saying, to me, it's like, okay, you want to say it's a first line, second line, third line. Okay, that's great, but they were the ones that set the tone. They were the ones that started the game. They were the ones that had that opening shift.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that opening shift in a game, you know, that's the whole thing. I think that was the key to this whole series here with Tampa Bay, is that Montreal knowingly played well with a lead. And all Tampa Bay did was play with a lead throughout the entire time.
Yeah, I think Montreal only got a lead in one game, I think it was. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head now. I think there was only one game that Montreal actually got a lead in. Other than when they won in overtime in game.
Well, see, I think game 3. See, that was the thing. Montreal needed to score first, and they didn't score first.
All right, I'm gonna do crack research here.
All right, hold on. Our crack research staff is on it.
Let's see. Game 5, obviously the only goal of the game. Game 4, Montreal scored first. Josh Anderson got the first goal of the game, put them up 1-0. They ended up winning the game. Game 3, Lightning scored first.
And I know game 2 and 1, Lightning scored first.
Game 2, Lightning scored first. Game 1, Lightning scored first. Yeah, the only time that Montreal got out to a lead in the series where they scored the first goal was Game 4, which they ended up winning. All the other 4 games, Tampa Bay scored the first goal. And once Montreal was down, Montreal is not a team that wants to play from behind. They want to get a lead and hold it. And Tampa Bay did a very good job of not letting that happen.
Which is why I think that this series was pretty much doomed from the start when Tampa Bay came out and pretty much just put a stamp on the series right from game 1.
Well, game 1 they won 5-1, and that was a pretty big opening statement right there.
I mean, that's kind of like, not only getting the pie in the face, right? But that's also like grabbing a hold of the back of your head and slamming you back into the pie again.
Yeah.
For lack of a better word.
It was a strong opening statement for sure.
5-1. I mean, in your building against, you know, Montreal, there's no way that Montreal is going to be able to come back from that, and that's why, because they played so well from in front, and every time that they weren't able to get the first goal, they lost.
Yeah.
Okay, and so when they were able to get the first goal, they won because they played really well from in front. Let's face it, almost every team does.
Yeah.
you can take more risks. Let's face it, you have a Vezina caliber winning goaltender back there in Carey Price. So for the most, and you have a pretty decent defense with Shea Weber back there, and some of the other veteran guys that they brought in, and some other players they have. I mean, they got a pretty good defense back there.
They do.
It's not like they have slouch guys. So I mean, it was just one of those things where they weren't able to play from the lead in this series at all. Tampa Bay comes out, smacks them in the head, 5-1. I'm sorry. That's why I think it was pretty much going to be a short-lived series anyway, because Montreal doesn't play well from behind.
Yep.
So that's kind of where I am with that. But I'll tell you what, though. Look for Montreal to be maybe a little bit more in the conversation now, I think, especially now that the divisions and everything are going to go back to the normal.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to see what the Canadiens look like next year, and to see what their roster looks like next year, because they had quite a number of free agents. Corey Perry, Joel Armia, Philip Deneau, Eric Stahl, and Tomas Tatar are all UFAs. Arturi Lehkonen and Jesperi Kotkaniemi are RFAs. And on the back end, Merrill and Gustafson were both depth guys, so they're UFAs. They're not a big deal, but they're losing a little bit up front. With Perry, Armia, Stahl, that was a fourth line that played very well for the Canadiens in this postseason. Philip Deneau might be the biggest free agent for them up front. That's a hit down the middle if you're not able to bring him back.
True.
Tatar didn't play in the playoffs. He's not much of a loss at this point, but it's going to be interesting to see what the Canadiens look like next year. And then you've got them back in a division, not only with Tampa Bay, but with Boston and Toronto. And Florida, who had a great season this year. I mean, there are 4 other really good teams right there. It's going to be interesting to watch, what happens with that Atlantic Division next season now that it's or presumably going to be back together.
Exactly, and that's what I'm going to look forward to. And I think that Montreal is going to be able to ride the storm with the players that they're going to be missing, no matter what happens in the expansion draft and who they might lose in the free agency. And I think Montreal is going to be able to put another a much more competitive team, pardon me, than I believe that they had this year.
Mm-hmm.
Just based off of how they finished this year. You know what I mean? They started off really well. The middle kind of wasn't all that great, but then they finished by making it to the Stanley Cup Finals.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And so they do have some players that are gonna probably go away, but they've got some pretty young depth coming up pretty well. Let's face it, Cole Caulfield will make Montreal fans forget a lot about who's not there.
Yeah, I think Caulfield's going to be a monster next season now that he's got some experience under his belt. He was great in the playoffs. Obviously went a little dry in the finals, but all of Montreal's offense went dry in the finals. They're going to be an interesting team to watch next year. Just to see where they stack up against the rest of that division. It's going to be really fun to see if they make the playoffs, or if Florida, Tampa Bay, Boston, and Toronto are all kind of ahead of them. That's something that we're going to find out next season, which is already just a few months away, which is pretty crazy to think about.
I know, but you know what, though? I'm looking forward to a regular season.
Oh, big time. Absolutely.
Okay. It's not that I didn't fall in love with what the NHL did this year, which, by the way, kudos, the huge golf clap or whatever you want to call it to the NHL for putting on a season this year.
Yeah.
For making it happen, guys. Thank you. And for finally at the end getting fans able to be in the stands, especially for the playoffs.
Yeah.
Where last year that was completely not the case.
Yeah.
And teams played in the bubble and all that other stuff, and there was no fans in the stands, and it was the big gray tarps over the seats, and Well, that was not the case in the finals this year, was it?
The atmosphere was some different in the playoffs this year compared to 2020.
Just a scoosh.
It was so much fun.
That's what I mean. And what a great, my God, I hate to sound so freaking corporate, but what a great product.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the NHL put out a really, really good product.
The playoffs was a lot of fun this year.
Oh man. And yeah, okay, the finals was a 5-gamer and it probably could have been a sweep, but Montreal kind of put that sore thumb out there for that one game to make it a 5-gamer.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But still, there was a lot more people watching that than anything else. And so that says a lot about the NHL and about what they were able to do for this season, what they were able to do for these playoffs, because they didn't have the expanded playoffs like they did last year. You know what I mean? And still were able, even though they had to rearrange the divisions. So because of the COVID restrictions and things of that nature,
yep.
and teams were able to just, ride out the storm and ride out the schedule and ride things out. And for the most part, I'd say the league did okay.
Yep.
I'm really gonna be interested to see if the cap moves after next season because of the huge TV contracts that were signed this past year.
I don't think it's going to, but we'll see.
I think something's going to have to give, because of those particular contracts that were signed by the NHL and the ownership and whatever for the TV deals, because they, in essence, tripled or doubled their money from what they had in the last deal they had. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm here to tell you, with the way the CBA is and all that other stuff, there's going to have to be something that's going to have to be addressed as far as that's concerned. And when they said, Bateman and everybody else said that, yeah, this is going to be a flat cap for 2 years, and then we'll raise it after. And I know we talked about this.
Reevaluate was what they said.
We'll reevaluate it based off of the income during the playoffs in those 2 seasons. Okay. Or the viewership, or whatever they were going to use to base it off. It was going to be based off of the past 2 seasons. Okay. Well, I think these playoffs pretty much proved that as long as you guys have hockey, you'll fill arenas.
Oh, there's definitely no doubt about that, but it's going to depend on how much they lost in 2020. That revenue, and also early 2021. I mean, a lot of these arenas didn't have fans until the very end of the regular season or the playoffs. So it's going to depend on how much money they lost over the past year and a half.
So then that might extend the salary, but see, I think that's going to be offset by the money that's coming in from the TV deals.
I have no idea. So,
well, the reason
without seeing the numbers, I have no idea.
Okay, well, in essence, they doubled the amount of money that they made for the last deal. The last deal was $4 billion for 6 years. For the contract was what the deal was for.
I have no idea what their deal with NBC was.
No, I'm pretty sure that's what it was. It was 6 or 7 years, $4 billion is what the total contract was. Okay, it was a combination of, I don't know if it was all NBC or not. I can't remember, but I know that the total accumulation of dollars for the last TV deal for NHL was $4 billion. And I can't remember if it was 6 or 7 years. Well, they just re-signed deals with ESPN and TNT, right? Each one signed a chunkier contract than the last one signed. And now they're up to almost $8 billion is what the current contract is going to be over the next 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I feel that the cap is going to have to go up a little bit after next year. Like at least to 85 million or something. It's going to have to go up a little bit. I just think it's going to happen.
Gary Bettman said it could be 5 years before the cap goes up again.
Yeah, well, he might not be commissioner after 5 years. Who knows?
I don't know. I have no idea what's going to
Right.
happen. I have no idea what the business side of the NHL is looking like right now.
Exactly. And that's going to probably be a discussion for another day. But it's fun to kind of speculate. But I really do feel, and I feel good about it, that the cap is going to go up because based off of the amount of money that's going to be coming in now for the new TV deals and the new streaming services that are going to be potentially open to the NHL now, and some of those are going to be good revenues for the NHL too. So I mean, there's a lot of things here that I think are positives, especially with the signings of these contracts. That it's just means that NHL is here to stay, and it's just that much more exposure.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see what happens. I have no idea about the business side of things or where it's going to go from here. But it was good to get fans back in the stands. And new TV partner starting next season. No more NHL on NBC. They've had it for the past, since the lockout. So since 2005, 2006, it was always NBC. And they were the only TV network that had a deal with the NHL. Now it's going to a split between ESPN and TNT. And the money is significantly bigger than what it was from NBC. And we'll have to see how that all works. We starting next season. Actually, starting this offseason, ESPN's got the draft. ESPN
I was just gonna say,
got the expansion draft. So
yeah.
Coverage with NBC is now done, and it is immediately going into ESPN and TNT now. And it's going to be a whole new presentation of the sport and of the league next year. After, with NBC being out of it now. And honestly, I'm pretty happy because NBC they checked out in these playoffs. Their coverage was minimal. They had no pregame stuff really whatsoever. You could tell NBC was completely checked out in these postseason. I thought it really wasn't a good television production from their point in the playoffs this year, and I am excited to see it go to someone else who is obviously going to care about it because they're paying a boatload of money for it. So I'm excited to see. ESPN has announced who their team is going to be. All the analysts and broadcasters and reporters, everybody that they've brought in. It's a great list. They've got a good mix of players from like different eras as well. You've got some 90s guys in there like Mark Messier and Chris Chelios. You've got some more modern players, former players in there. You've got a good list of broadcasters who have experience with hockey before. I'm excited to see what it looks like on television next year, but whatever it is, it's going to be better than what NBC just did these past playoffs because they were completely checked out. And it was noticeable.
Yeah, for sure. Because TNT is going to have Wayne Gretzky.
Yeah, TNT got Gretzky.
Is going to be their analyst, similarly to what Charles Barkley does for the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
Wayne Gretzky will do for TNT for the NHL, and that's going to be interesting. Here's the other thing too. I'm going to be interested to see who they get to call the games. Now, I know that there's a group of guys that are going to be part of the quote-unquote national games. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to be interested to see who they get to call some of these games. And if they're going to be bringing some guys back from – I know that there was because you're getting some of the NBC guys are going to come over and some of the other, things like that, but not a lot of them. There's not a lot of the guys that were on NBA, like, Keith Jones.
No, I don't think that the
Pierre Maguire, Eddie Olczyk. You know what I mean?
No, the most of the NBC guys are not going to be.
I'm gonna go on record right now and tell you that I'm not gonna miss Pierre Maguire between the class.
Oh God, no. Absolutely not. Absolutely.
I'm sorry, dude. I would kill to be there, but I'm not gonna miss.
All right,
things.
I pulled up the picture of everybody. So play-by-play analysts are going to be John Buccigross, who does a ton of college hockey. He's going to be fantastic.
And he actually was part of the original group when they did the NHL and ESPN when it first started. He was part of that group.
Yes. So Buccigross is doing play-by-play. Leah Hextall is going to be doing play-by-play sometimes and a reporter. That's really cool. Steve Levy, he's done hockey before.
Yeah.
He's going to be doing play-by-play. Sean McDonough, I think that's interesting. Didn't McDonough do baseball? I think he's mostly a baseball guy.
Yeah, I thought he might have done some football.
He did football too. I think he also did baseball. But
yeah,
that's
I know
going to
he
be
did some
interesting.
baseball. Yeah. All right.
I don't know the last one. Bob Wischusen. I don't know who that is.
Yeah, that doesn't ring
that name doesn't ring a bell with me. But those are your play-by-play guys.
Okay.
Analyst Ryan Callahan. He has done work with NBC. He's been on Between the Periods. Chris Chelios, obviously, we talked about. Let's see. Kevin Weeks. He's been around the NHL media circle.
I was just gonna say Kevin Weeks, though. He was part of the group that was part of NBC.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
He was definitely especially during the playoffs.
Yep.
He was part of the desk.
Mm-hmm.
He was there with what's his name, Patrick Sharp.
Yep. He's done that. Mark Messier, obviously, we talked about. Barry Melrose, he's been at ESPN forever. He's been their only hockey guy. He's been their only hockey guy for a long time. Ray Ferraro is coming in. He's been working up with TSN in Canada. To have him on US TV is going to be awesome. Brian Boucher is coming over from NBC. AJ Molesko is coming over from NBC. Rick DiPietro, that was an interesting one. Rick DiPietro, I haven't seen him on TV. I don't know if he does Islanders or if this is going to be new for him.
Because he was an Islander.
Yeah, he played his career there. I don't know. DiPietro was one that caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting to see him, but there's a good mix. Hillary Knight as well. One of the best female hockey players to ever play. She's going to be an analyst. That's going to be really cool. And Cassie Campbell Pascal as well, another great one coming in. So
I like that they brought in some women.
I do too.
That is finally
a good number of them, and very. Not just doing it just to do it either, but very respected and knowledgeable people that are 100% going to know what they're talking about.
Right. Okay. So that's exactly the key right there, is that they're just not bringing in the lady that looks good.
Yeah. No, they're bringing in people that are absolutely going to know what they're talking about.
Which... kudos to that. I mean, that makes me feel a little better, because I was quite worried about how these networks were going to present the game again, because I saw what ESPN did with their Formula One coverage. So they basically purchased the feed from the Sky Sports, which gets it from the FIA, which is the governing body of Formula One. Okay, so there's no pre-show, there's no after-show. It's just, boom, here's practice, boom, here's qualifying, boom, here's the race. There's no commercials, which finally, because now you're not missing a lot of race time, because, but there's no pre-race show. There's no. It's just whoever the guys are that are Sky Sports reporters, and those guys that are calling the race. Those are the guys that are calling the race. That's who you get to see.
Mm-hmm.
You get to see their graphics and everything else. That's all ESPN did was buy the feed.
Yeah, no, this is way bigger than that. They've got a full crew in. They're gonna be going all out, and you would think so with the amount of money that they paid for these NHL TV rights. It looks like they're really going to be dedicated to it and going all out for it, and I'm excited to see what it looks like. I'm really interested in seeing how the drafts go, both the expansion and the entry draft, because that's going to be the first things with the NHL back on ESPN, and I think it's going to be really interesting to see how those both go.
That's a great point. Those would be good milestones to see how they handle things. You know what I mean? Because those are very, very, especially the draft. That is that's getting to be now a much larger viewed event now for the NHL. Okay. And I'm going to be very interested to see what kind of coverage they're going to have, because a lot of the coverage that's happened that we've seen in the past involved a lot of visions of the players that they're selecting, interviews with those players, a lot of features of those players. So yeah, I'm going to be interested to see how they're going to handle things.
Yeah, absolutely. I know ESPN does the NFL draft, and that's the biggest draft out of any of them.
Okay, but they're not the only one that does they're not the only one that covers the NFL draft.
No, but they are the one that most people watch. And
I did for a while there, but honestly now I really like it's sometimes I flip back and forth between the NHL or the NFL network and what ESPN does. You know what I mean?
I haven't really watched NFL Network. Most people watch it on ESPN, and they've been doing the NFL draft for a long time. And they've got drafts down, so I'm interested to see them bring their experience in not just making the draft more than just some players' names being called, but making a spectacle out of it, like they do with the NFL. I think I'm excited to see if they can bring that to the NHL.
I too am excited to see if they can bring that, because if they can,
you can make the NHL draft a big show.
I mean, they had 11.5 million people that watched the draft for the NFL.
Probably, yeah. I mean,
this past season.
That's a huge. That's always a huge event in April.
That's a lot of viewership there, man, and if hockey can tap into that, and I think they can.
Yeah,
I think they have a good enough product where I think they can. I do
too. All right, so we're going to move on now. We've had a lot of talk about the finals, a lot of talk about TV, starting up with ESPN and TNT this offseason, and first season of actual games will be this coming year, where the TV deal changes. Now we're going to hear from our sponsor, Canine Country Club Resorts. A big thank you and shout out to them. And when we come back, we've got some off-season stuff to talk about. Big news involving Vladimir Tarasenko, and then obviously the expansion draft is coming up here in a couple weeks, not too far off.
Nope.
About 2.5 weeks away or something like that. So
just about that.
Yeah, so it's not far off. We're gonna see what Seattle's roster looks like, and teams have some big decisions to make heading into that. So we're gonna talk about that coming up. But right now we're gonna hear from Canine Country Club Resorts, our show sponsor here and sponsor of all things Steel Flyers All Sports Network. A big thank you to them for their support. We couldn't do it without them. And here's a word.
Greetings. This is Steel Flyers from the Steel Flyers All Sports Network, and we have two very special guests. We are delighted to be joined by Tracy Musser and Nicole Howard from the Canine Country Club Resorts. Tracy and Nicole are both managers for CCC Resorts and work at the Windsor or at the club, one of two locations both in Manheim, Pennsylvania. Congratulations on your 30th year anniversary of being in business. Let me start off by saying this. Steel Flyer stands behind this company 100%. Taken care of Steel Flyer's furry friend for the last 2 years now, and they are a one-stop shop for everything your furry friend needs. In fact, let's find out what our friends at CCC Resorts offer. Nicole, how are you today?
Good. How are you?
Doing great, thank you. What are some of the great boarding services that you guys offer, and what do we have to do in order to get our furry friends taken care of when we are unable to travel with them?
Well, we like to bring everybody in for a tour first. That way they can see the behind the scenes, they can see where they stay, they can see where they play, and then we explain all of the fun things that we can add on to their reservation, whether it be one of our packages, either a nature walk, a ball time, or even a cuddle time.
Oh, wow, that sounds great. Boy, it sure sounds like a resort to me. So how are you today, Tracy?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Tracy, tell me, is it true that you guys have both an indoor and an outdoor pool at the Windsor location?
It is true. We've got one of each, so we're able to offer year-round swimming. The indoor pool is a great option for dogs who are swimming for therapy or rehab. It's got that sloped entry so they can wade into the water. Our outdoor pool is a little bit larger, and it's 4 foot deep the whole way across. And both of them are saltwater pools, so it's really easy on the dog's skin and coat.
Wow, that's very awesome. So then during the summer months, you have a much deeper pool outside and then a sloped entry shallow pool indoors for the dogs. Tracy, tell the folks how we can get some pool time.
Well, the first thing everyone does is come for an intro swim. We use that time to make sure the dog is comfortable in the water. We make sure they know how to get out of the pool safely, and we go over all the pool rules and etiquette with the clients as well. After that, they're able to schedule private appointments where they have the pool to themselves, or they can invite friends and have a whole group swim going on.
So after a dip in the pool, then it would have to be off to the groomers, right? I mean, our furry friends cannot go out looking their best. Nicole, what are some of the great services your top-notch groomers provide?
Our groomers, they specialize in full service grooms. We can do the basics, whether it be just a bath and a brush out or a blowout. Or for the extra pampered pooches, we can do nail dremels, we can do deodorizing soaks, and also facials.
Wow, man, that sounds like a resort if you ask me. Tracy, I know one of the main programs here at CCC Resorts is the WAGS program. The Steel Flyers dog is enrolled in this program. So why don't you tell the folks what is involved in this and how they can get enrolled?
Yeah, the WAGS program is our primary daycare option at the Windsor. It's designed to be a structured program for people who are looking for a set routine for their dog. They all come on the same days each week, which allows them to have set friends, and we know exactly what's going on with each group. So we do a little bit more activities, and we build more into their daily routine there. But we've got other daycare options as well for people looking for a little less commitment. We do an hourly care where you can drop them off and just pay by the hour. We also do a day stay option, which is great for the dogs that prefer human friends instead of making friends with other dogs. And then we have a traditional daycare option as well if you're looking for the occasional outing for your dog.
Wow, there you have it. A full-service groomer, a daycare program, and an indoor and outdoor pool. What more could you ask for? Sure seems like CCC Resorts has everything covered. Remember, DOG, depend on God.
And we are back. Again, a big thank you to Canine Country Club Resorts for their sponsorship, not only of this show, but of everyone here at Steel Flyers All Sports Network. Really appreciate it. And again, we could not do it without them. But some big news broke actually during Game 5 of the Stanley Cup Finals. It's not often that you have a Stanley Cup Finals game interrupted by major off-season news, but Vladimir Tarasenko, obviously multi-time 30-goal scorer for the St. Louis Blues and Stanley Cup champion, it was reported officially requested a trade from St. Louis. There was a lot of rumblings about him on the trade market prior to that, but he came out and actually requested a trade now from the Blues. Apparently he is unhappy with the way that they've handled him with his shoulder injuries. He's had 3 shoulder surgeries over the past few years. It's really limited his production, really limited his availability to be on the ice. And this whole thing is kind of becoming a mess for everybody involved, not just Tarasenko, but also the Blues, because there's so many variables into this. He has a no trade clause in his contract, which, obviously puts him in control of where he goes. There's been reports that there are only 4 teams that he wants to go to. Carolina, Vegas, Boston, and the New York Islanders are apparently the 4 teams that he'll accept a trade to. He carries a massive cap hit at $7.5 million over the next 2 seasons until his current deal is up, and he's been limited to just 34 regular season games over the past 2 seasons. And he's only gotten, I think, 24 points in those games. He's down to 7 goals in the regular season over the past 2 years. He's missed a ton of time, obviously, because of those shoulder issues. He has played in the playoffs. He did play in the playoffs this past year.
Yeah.
2020, he played at the start of the playoffs, but then quickly was shut down for the rest of the postseason. St. Louis didn't make it super deep either. But there's just so many question marks involved in this. There's neither the player nor the team is in a good spot here. And overall, I think this is a tough situation that I think both sides would just like to get over with as quickly as possible. But I don't think there's a huge market out there for Tarasenko given the health questions. St. Louis is certainly going to have to eat money if they do move him. This is not a great situation. It's going to be interesting to see how it all works out and which jersey he's going to be wearing next year.
And the 4 teams that he potentially would want to go to don't really have the kind of money either to oh, sure, what, $7.5 million?
They're definitely not just going to take on $7.5 million for a guy that's played 34 games over the past 2 years.
I wouldn't. Yeah, no. Let me ask you a question now. What happens if nobody wants him?
He's stuck in St. Louis, and that's going to be a mess in the locker room.
Because, you can request a trade.
Mm-hmm.
But, and that's the other thing, too. I don't even... why would you even do that? Why would you even trade him unless you could get something that
his trade value is at an all-time low right now.
That's what I mean. You're not going to be able to
You're not going to get much in return for him if you're the St. Louis Blues. But you kind of need, he's been so vocal about how unhappy he is. You can't bring him back into that locker room. That could be a team destroyer right there.
True. So, I mean, you're forced to do something with him.
This is a bad situation for everybody.
Because let's face it, I think with the new CBA, they would have to eat I don't know, 41% or something.
No, you can retain up to 50% of a player's salary.
Okay, 50. So
they could take 50% of his salary if they needed to get him out, but then that's dead money for St. Louis, and they're not in. It's not like they're loaded with cap space either. So
that would basically be $14 million for the next 2 years for him. If they trade him away and eat half of his contract.
Well, what's half of 7?
They'd be responsible for $14 million.
Half of 7.5 per season. So.
Well, no. If it's 15 million for the next 2 years, it's 7.5 for 2. That's what, you know what I mean? You cut that in half.
Yeah, but St. Louis would only pay 50% of the 7.5.
Yeah, but it's 7.5 for this year and 7.5 for next year.
Yeah, but against the cap, it only counts 1 year at a time.
Oh, 1 year.
So from a cap space standpoint, they would have to eat the 3 point out of the 7.5. They would have to eat the 3.75 or whatever it is that.
Yeah.
That'd be dead money. That'd be almost $4 million in money that to a guy that's not even playing on your team anymore.
And that would also count for the following year then too.
Yeah, it'd be the same until
so that's
that
what I
contract's
mean.
up.
So you're paying half of his contract for the next 2 years.
If you eat half the money, which they're they're going to have to take
Yeah,
some. They're going to have to
yeah.
retain some sort of money to get a deal done here. The other thing, if you're Tarasenko, if you're going to come out and openly request a trade, I know he has a no trade clause in his contract, so he has all the control as to whether he waives that clause or not. But if you're Tarasenko, you cannot limit them to 4 teams if you want out that badly.
Seeing as how those 4 teams would not really be able to afford that kind of
to
a
me,
salary.
like, if you want out that bad, you're accepting a trade to more than just those 4 teams.
I have to agree with you on that.
I don't know how you put the team in that position, like saying, I want out, but it has to be here. They're going to be like, we can't get a deal done with it here. We're not just going to give you away. This whole situation is, I'm going to be really interested to see which jersey he's wearing next season. Because I think getting a deal done is not going to be easy for the St. Louis Blues because of the contract and because of the health. If you're trading for Vladimir Tarasenko, that is an incredible risk on your part, hoping that he's back healthy.
You know, that's something else, too, where St. Louis, because he has a no-move clause, has to be protected.
He has a no trade, not a no move.
Or no trade.
They could leave him unprotected in the expansion draft.
Oh, well, okay.
Obviously, you get nothing for him at that point.
Well, you know, you can't have your cake and eat it too.
Exactly. I just, this is going to be an interesting situation. What if Seattle takes him and he doesn't want to go to Seattle? Does he then demand a trade from the Kraken? Like,
but I mean, he wouldn't have a choice then. He would have to demand a trade from the Kraken because now the Kraken would have his rights, lock, stock, and barrel. Right. So if he doesn't want to play for Seattle, if that's not where he wants to be, then he would have to get a trade.
This whole thing is going to just, I don't know. I feel like it's a terrible spot for everybody because if you're the St. Louis Blues, you have a player with a huge contract that's been a star player. He had 5 straight 30-plus goal seasons before these injuries started.
Exactly.
You have a star player.
He was integral to helping you get the cup.
Yeah, you have a star player who wants out. And now all of a sudden, you know, you've got this terrible contract. You've got major health concerns. Potentially going to, whatever team he potentially goes to, it's going to be a huge problem for them because it's a massive risk.
Yeah.
Because what happens, if he's not healthy? It's not. Shoulder injuries are bad enough in their own right. It's another thing when you've got a sniper, somebody who's a pure shooter, like that's what he does, with 3 shoulder issues already. That's a huge question mark. I mean, this guy's only played a little over 30 games over the past 2 seasons. That's
not giving me the warm and fuzzies.
That's a monster risk to any team trading for him.
Yeah, that's the cold and scratchies.
And for Tarasenko now, you want out of the team that you're under contract with. Yeah. You've got, a very limited list of teams that you want to go to. You do have control, but if St. Louis can't get a deal done with any of those teams that you want to go to, either you're going back to the Blues, which is not a great situation, or you're accepting a trade to a team that you don't really want to play for. It's just, this whole thing feels like a mess.
Yeah.
And I don't know what's going to happen over these next couple weeks with this. But I think the best thing for both teams would just to get this over with, and whatever's going to happen.
Okay. So, as a no trade clause, he doesn't have to be protected.
Yeah, his is not an NMC, it's an NTC.
All right. And if he doesn't have to be protected, that could be one way that St. Louis could get him out. And then it would be on to Seattle then. That would be out of St. Louis's hands. They wouldn't have to worry about it anymore. They would be out of their hands. And if he doesn't want to play for Seattle, then they would have to deal with it.
That would, yeah.
And to be honest with you, that would be the only thing that I would really see the only way of St. Louis getting out of this particular ugly mess is to expose him or to call Seattle up and be like, hey, so we would really like for you to take this guy. What would it take for you to take this guy? What do we have to give up for you to take this guy? Maybe they make that deal to get him out of St. Louis.
Yeah, I think
and then maybe that involves another team to where he goes to. So, you know what I mean?
I think it's very likely that there's probably going to end up being some sort of package type thing here.
Yeah.
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 Absolutely.
Like it's not just going to be
It's
him.
not going to be Tarasenko to a team there's going to be a package involved here.
And there's going to have to be something that's going to have to be worked out, because the 4 teams that he selected don't necessarily have the cap space to even, unless
Boston does, depending on what they do this offseason, because they've got like $30 million opened up for this offseason. But if you bring back Taylor Hall, if you bring back Mike Riley, if you bring back David Krejci, if you bring back Tuukka Rask, that money can go away very quickly.
Real quick.
It could go away real quickly, but Boston potentially could. The Islanders really don't. Vegas is not getting Vladimir Tarasenko. Unless they're able to lose Pacioretty and Fleury or something like that. They're not going to have the money for Tarasenko.
Yeah.
Carolina might be able to work something, but if I'm a GM right now, Vladimir Tarasenko is not high on my list of guys that I'd be going out to make.
I was just going to say, yeah, I wouldn't, even though
the health questions are just too much in my opinion.
Yeah, even though Carolina's one of the teams there too.
He's a really good player when he's healthy. He hasn't been healthy.
See, and that's going to be the thing where I haven't seen enough body of work from him since he's been back healthy.
Yeah, because you don't know what his production drop-off is going to be like because of these injuries. Even if he is able to play a full 82 games next year, is he still going to be a 30-goal scorer? Or are, the shoulder issues going to drop him down to a 20-goal scorer or drop him down to a 15-goal scorer? Like, you don't know what his production level is going to be like post-injury.
It's funny that we're talking about this, because he's not the only major star player who voiced their unhappiness with the current team that they're on and would like to leave the current team that they're on, but is also potentially facing a surgery. And that is not that. I mean, that automatically makes him a high risk as well, too. And I'm talking about Jack Eichel.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's kind of funny that, Tarasenko wants to leave St. Louis, is making $7-something million a year, has major questions about shoulder injury. And Jack Eichel wants to leave Buffalo. He's making $10 million a year.
And he's got a neck issue now.
And he's got a neck injury that's going to have to require some kind of surgery or fix or something.
That's a huge question mark. There's been a lot of doctors that have said when you get into neck type stuff, like, you may never be the same after that.
And, I've talked to people that have had that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And they say that the higher you get up on the vertebrae chart,
yep,
the more difficult or the more issues there are, the higher you get up to the top of the head.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So they're saying, he is trusting in his doctors. Look, I'm not trying to take away from the Tarasenko big news, because I think that was, you just don't hear that drop during the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So that, I think, is a big major thing that is going to need to be addressed this offseason. And I also think the other big major thing is Jack Eichel.
Mm-hmm.
Where's Jack Eichel going to go? Who's going to win the sweepstakes for Jack Eichel? You know what I mean?
And you could throw Seth Jones in that conversation as well. You've got a big, defenseman who's been a top pair guy, even though he's kind of struggled over the past season or so, or real two now. He hasn't been the player that he was in his best year, but you've got a guy that desperately wants a change of scenery on the back end and has the potential to be a 50-point defenseman, I think. This is setting up, I think, to be a very interesting offseason. I think we could see some major moves this offseason. This could be one of the more exciting off seasons that we've had in a while.
compared to the last one that we've had,
Oh yeah.
anything
Oh
is going
yeah.
to be
Yeah,
10
not
times
much
more.
happened last. I think obviously there were reasons for that, and it was a weird time of year for the off season. Yeah,
Yeah,
but anything's better than what happened between 2020 and 2021. But I really think this is setting up to potentially be an extremely exciting off season for NHL
because we
standards.
got three big Seth Jones, Tarasenko, and Jack Eichel are relatively three big names,
Those are star players. I mean, Jack
star
Eichel's a
players,
superstar.
$10 million
Tarasenko's
a
a
year,
star, and Seth Jones is a star.
right? Each of these guys were stars in their respectable teams, leagues, whatever, and they're making big money and they're asking to be traded. Okay, and so now we're coming up on an expansion draft, which is another exciting little piece of this
Yep.
whole pie, because now teams have to scramble to put together a list of guys that they can protect and a list of guys that unfortunately they're not going to be able to protect.
Mm-hmm.
And Seattle has just now suddenly become the bank of the NHL,
Yep.
and has all this leverage now, especially against teams that have no or are over the cap,
Mm-hmm.
that are looking to try to dump salary with players and things of that nature. So I really think, number one, this offseason is going to prove to be 110 times more interesting and exciting than what it was last year.
Yeah.
I also think that with the expansion draft, that adds another layer of excitement,
Mm-hmm.
especially for hockey fans, especially for fans of the new team, Seattle Kraken. I'm going to be excited to see what this team does. I'm going to be excited to see who they draft from the expansion draft for one, and then the deals that they're going to put together, because 2 days later is the regular draft.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's like boom, boom, right in a row. You're going to get hammered with all this stuff, and teams need to be ready. You know what I mean? And now you're throwing in that mix where Tarasenko wants out of St. Louis. That could potentially affect St. Louis, how the expansion draft happens for them. That could also affect how the draft happens for them. They lose that kind of player, that top line, top scoring, that amount of production, and they lose that kind of player out of their lineup.
Mm-hmm.
That's tough to replace overnight.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
know what I mean? Jack Eichel, one of their top leading scorers in Buffalo, and one of their
the Jack Eichel on Buffalo is so much of a higher level player than anybody else that the Sabres have right now.
right.
Take him off
exactly.
that team. I mean, you have an AHL team almost.
Right, but now you've got a lot of money to spend to get some more players to come up there. But
Yeah, if they want to. I mean,
yeah,
Buffalo's been a disaster for a decade now.
right, and they are going to get the number one draft pick
They
this year
do get
too.
the number one pick this year.
So you know what I mean. And then it's these star players that want to leave that's going to throw monkeys in the wrenches for the teams that they're on, especially in the expansion draft, and then how things are going to shake down in the regular draft, because you can't just replace a Jack Eichel overnight. You can't just replace a Tarasenko overnight. You know, you can't just replace a Jones overnight. You just don't.
Another name that's been talked a lot about that's kind of gone quiet recently, but you got to think a team that's going to do something this offseason is the Calgary Flames and Johnny Gaudreau. His name's been talked about a lot over the past really 2 seasons about him possibly being moved. Calgary can't come back next year with the same team that they had this season. I mean, they completely underachieved this year. Didn't even make the playoffs. Gaudreau's obviously, Monahan's been talked about. Gaudreau's been talked about. They've got to make some sort of major move in Calgary to try and shake things up. There's another guy that could potentially be on the trade market this offseason. I think this could be a really exciting offseason for the NHL.
I think so too, because you're going to see some big names moving.
Yeah.
That are going to be playing for different teams than what they are with right now.
Yeah.
And you're going to see some big name players wearing different sweaters next year. And the anticipation and thought of that is quite tantalizing, if you must know the truth.
I'm excited as someone who does hockey content and needs big things to happen to have exciting stuff to talk about. I'm excited for this offseason. I think there are going to be some awesome moves made.
I feel like what's his name in the Simpsons? Excellent.
Yes. Yes.
All this great stuff. Excellent. Keep it coming, NHL.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, these are major storylines that are going to be going into the offseason, not only just during the expansion draft and the regular draft, but some of these deals are going to have to take place during the summer.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And so those are going to be huge storylines to follow during the summer and how some of these things are going to shake down, because that's exactly right. There's a lot of stuff that's going to happen this offseason, especially with the expansion draft
Yep.
being a major shakeup of NHL rosters now,
Yep.
where you're going to see guys that were on teams before not on those teams anymore because, they got picked by the expansion draft.
Yep.
So I, for one, am very much excited about this upcoming expansion draft. I'm very much excited to see. Actually, there's a couple of days beforehand that I'm going to be excited about, and that's the 17th of July.
I want to see the protection list.
Right.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yes. See, now you know where I'm going.
Yep.
Okay. That's where I'm going. I want to see what team's protection list is, because that right there is going to spell how teams are going to go moving forward.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Because with the list of guys that are going to be available for, I mean, I know this sounds a little cliche-ish, but could you imagine being Seattle and Ron Francis and just getting a list of guys and seeing a name on there like, pick somebody that they can't protect.
Yep.
Knowing full well that, ooh, okay, that player's coming to play for Seattle. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited for the expansion draft. I can't wait to see. I'm not. People are always asking me like, who do you think's going to be taken from this team, and who, who are you doing any mock drafts? I'm like, I'm not doing anything until those protection lists come out. So I want to know who's actually available and who's not.
Yeah, I've done some like mock protection lists.
Yeah, that could be fun.
Okay, I wouldn't mind doing a couple of those.
I
if
know
you want
who
to,
I would
man, we
protect
can.
on most teams, but
yeah, all right. Well, let's do that. Let's do one for Boston, man, because I want to do that.
Oh boy, on the fly here.
Yeah,
hang on.
and
I'm going back to cap friendly again.
No, we're not gonna. No, we're not gonna do it for this show. We'll do it for another show.
Oh, all right. I was gonna do it right now. I can tell you right now.
because I want to. No. The reason why I say we should do that for another show, because I want to get into a impromptu end of the season power ranking.
Okay. Well, it's easy at the top.
Yeah.
No, I have a good idea of, I think, how I would rank, end of season power rankings. Are we basing this off of playoffs or everything as a whole?
Let's say everything as a whole.
Okay.
So you would base, if say Montreal was in your list, you would take
the finals. I can't not have them.
Okay, but you would have to take their entire body of work for the season.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay,
so they wouldn't be as high on the list if it was based off just the playoffs, because they obviously weren't great in the regular season.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And that also gives you the opportunity to say, I'm just using this as an example, Detroit could potentially be a power ranked team, even though they didn't really maybe play in the playoffs, but they finished the regular season really strong or something along those lines, just using that as an example.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right. Are we doing top 5?
Let's do top 5.
Top 5? Okay.
Yeah, top 5. And let's start at number 5. Okay. Number 5. We'll start at number 5. And give me who you think is your number 5 team on the power ranking, our top shelf power ranking.
I'm thinking right now between two teams. One of them's going to be 4. One of them's going to be 5. I just don't know which order to put them in.
Okay.
I'll put Montreal at 5. They were a mediocre hockey team in the regular season. They got really hot in the playoffs and went on a spectacular run. They went all the way to the finals, but if you're going to look at this season as a whole, I'll put Montreal at 5. That regular season, they were a good team in the regular season. They barely made the playoffs, but they made up for it in the postseason. And the team that's coming next at number 4 was spectacular in the regular season, but then kind of really lost it in the playoffs.
All right. Okay, I'll agree with that. I like Montreal at 5.
They can't not be on the list. They made the finals, but they weren't a good team in the regular season.
No, not so much. No, but boy, when they got into the
when they got in the playoffs, it was a totally different Montreal team.
We got Vezina caliber
Carey Price. Yep.
We got a sweep for a series.
Mm-hmm.
We got a huge comeback against Toronto to win. We got them beating Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'll agree with that at number 5. Montreal at number 5.
Yep.
I'll agree with that. Okay. All right. And I think I know where you're going with number 4.
Yep.
Because I think I would put them there as well. And I think you're going to go with Florida Panthers.
No.
No?
That was not my pick.
Okay. I have to say that...
You got Florida at 4?
I had a real hard time between that and Pittsburgh and Washington. Maybe Boston in there too. I don't know. Man.
Totally different direction from me.
Yeah, I don't know. See, that's why this is impromptu.
Yeah, I know who I'm putting it for.
All right. All right, I'm just going to come out and say it. Why not? Right? Let's say I'm going to put the Islanders at 4.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to put the Islanders at 4. I picked them to actually win the East, even though they didn't win the East.
Well, they won the East when it mattered.
But they represented the East.
Yeah, they didn't win the East Division in the regular season. They won the East when it mattered in the playoffs.
Right.
Yeah.
So I like what they did this year.
I do too.
Yeah, they kind of dropped off there a little bit, but boy, they came on strong. They played really, really well, especially towards the end of the season. They got hot right when they needed to.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And
they played great in the playoffs. To take Tampa to 7 games, look at the way Tampa manhandled the other teams that they played in these playoffs. And for the Islanders to get them to a Game 7 was phenomenal.
For the Islanders, look at what the Islanders had to climb through to get to Tampa Bay to Game 7.
Yep.
All right, you had to go through Pittsburgh first,
Boston,
and then Boston,
and then the Tampa Bay. To get to the Final Four for them was spectacular.
Yeah,
I'm going to be talking about them at a later point.
Okay, so far we have Montreal at number 5.
Yep.
That we both agreed on.
Yep.
My number 4 is going to be the Islanders.
Mine is the Colorado Avalanche.
Okay.
They were the President's Trophy winning team in the regular season. They were spectacular. They had the most points in the league. They had the best offense in the league. They had a top 10 defense. They're one of the best all-around teams in the NHL. They just second round again. Colorado. This is year 3 now in a row. Right, 2019, 2020, and 2021. Colorado out in the second round, and they came up short in the playoffs. I can't put them higher. They came up short in the playoffs, so they're definitely on the list because they were the best team in the regular season. But they came up short when it mattered the most. So I have Colorado down at number 4. Great regular season, not good enough in the postseason.
You know what? Let's see. You're going to be mad at me because I have them at number 3. And because they won the President's Trophy.
Yeah, I mean, they had a spectacular regular season, no doubt
And-
about it.
And frankly, I think
I could see
that
them there.
I just think they ran out of steam in the playoffs, and they ran up against a team that was a little better than them at the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I think that even though, Grubauer was another name that was in the voting for Vezina, even though he didn't get very many votes, he still was in the running.
He was a finalist. That's big, yeah.
Exactly. So I mean, and with the team that they have there, that's kind of who I would have at number 3.
My number 3 team is the New York Islanders.
Oh, almost. Okay, there you go.
I was super impressed with what the Islanders did in the playoffs. They had a good regular season. It wasn't a great regular season, but they had a good regular season. They played an extremely tough division.
Yeah.
The East was very competitive between like the top 6 teams.
Yeah.
So it really wasn't, it wasn't they finished 4th, but it wasn't like it was a bad 4th. It was, they were still a solid team. And then they get into the playoffs and they knock out the 1 seed Penguins, and then they beat the Bruins, and then they take Tampa all the way to 7 in the Final 4 for the 2nd straight year. I'll tell you what, I've become a big fan of what the New York Islanders are doing. Their roster, the way that they play, the physicality, the tight defense. Barry Trotz, I think I've said this many, many times, I think is the best coach in the league. I think I have the Islanders at number 3. I was super impressed with what they did. And that team just always seems to play really well at the right time. They always make playoff runs. They always seem to overachieve. Like Barry Trotz gets more out of a lineup than what you should get out of them,
or what you would think.
They're always end up going further in the playoffs than you think they're going to go.
Yeah.
And I think that's a tremendous trait to have in a hockey team. And
I agree.
I've got the Islanders at 3.
Okay. Well, we're not that far off.
No, we just flipped 3 and 4.
You know what I mean? We're not really that far. And I bet you we're probably going to be spot on here in the next 2.
Probably.
Yeah, because I even though they didn't win the President's Trophy, and even though they didn't beat Montreal, I would still have to put Vegas at number 2.
Combining regular season success with playoff success, Vegas is my number 2 team as well.
Yes, sir.
Like they had a better regular season than the Islanders. They weren't as good as the Islanders actually they made it to the exact same round. They were even in the playoffs. They ended up losing in the same spot in the playoffs. They were better than Colorado in the postseason. They were pretty equal with Colorado in the regular season. I think that was a tiebreaker that decided the President's Trophy.
It was.
They ended up with the same amount of points. So obviously, they were significantly better than Montreal in the regular season. They lost to Montreal, obviously, in the playoffs. But when you're combining regular season success with playoff success, Vegas is my number 2 team. They made it to the Final 4 again, which seems like a disappointment that they weren't able to make it further than that. But to be one of the last 4 teams standing in the NHL, you've made it. You've had a good year. And they were one of the top teams in the regular season as well. So I've got Vegas at 2.
That's exactly the reason why I have them 2, because I thought that their regular season was better than the Islanders.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, which is why I have the Islanders, a couple steps lower. Yeah. But I felt that Vegas had a much better regular season this year for the most part. I also felt that their playoffs were relatively
equal.
I mean, they lost in the same round that the Islanders did, but. And they were their series were just as impressive because they beat Minnesota in the first one, and Minnesota was able to take them to 7.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And then in the next series they were able to win quite. That was That was a hard-fought series, but they did all right.
They won 4 straight against Colorado. That's pretty darn good.
Yeah, you know what I mean. So, and Colorado being on the list too. So
Yeah.
that says a lot about the fact that those two teams, both being in the same division, are both on this list. So yeah, I have Vegas at number 2.
And that leaves number 1, which I think is pretty obvious.
New Jersey?
Yeah. No, come on, it's Buffalo. Buffalo is
Buffalo.
number 1.
All right,
yeah.
I'm sorry, Buffalo.
No, the Tampa Bay Lightning are
Tampa Bay Lightning.
the Stanley Cup champions. They're the Stanley Cup champions, back to back.
Yep.
Tampa's clearly asserted themselves as number 1 this year.
Can't argue that. Dude, that was cool.
It was.
Right, just off the cuff. Right? Like, I just jotted them down.
Yeah.
You know, and like, I just wrote down, oh, man,
I just
5.
did it straight out of my head, trying to think about the top teams.
Okay, well, I wrote it down just so I could make sure that I had them so I could make sure I knew who I was talking about.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I was like, oh, yeah. And then I was sitting there thinking, I'm like, oh my gosh, man, number 5. And I thought, oh, Pittsburgh, oh, Washington, oh, well, Toronto didn't do too bad. Oh, no. Montreal, because they made the finals.
Yeah, Montreal made the finals even after a really bad, not bad. They weren't like New Jersey, but after a very mediocre regular season.
You can't argue with Tampa Bay being the top team. They were the champs.
No, they're the champs. I think Vegas' combined body of work is better than the Islanders and the Avalanche, just because the Islanders, just slightly not at that level in the regular season, but very good in the playoffs.
Yep. And
Avalanche, great in the regular season, but kind of came up pretty short in the playoffs. Did not meet expectations in the postseason.
Yep.
So I have Vegas at 2. We had our 3-4s flip-flop from each other, but we both had the Islanders and the Avalanche, just different orders in 3 and 4, and then Montreal coming in at 5. So I think it makes sense.
That just goes to show you that even though we haven't done the power rankings since the playoffs started,
we're still thinking about it.
No, but I mean that we're still on the same page.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
It doesn't matter. We're still, we haven't done it for 2 months, but what?
After that 5th spot, I think you get a number of different teams that come into the fold there.
Yeah,
that would get to the point where you'd have to kind of write it out and think it all through to put them in some sort of order.
Yeah, because you'd have to throw Boston in there, Pittsburgh, Toronto, Washington. You know what I mean? You'd also have to throw in Minnesota, Edmonton, because these are all teams that made the playoffs.
Winnipeg,
you know what I mean? Winnipeg,
Carolina. We haven't even mentioned Carolina. They would probably be 6 or 7, 8, somewhere in there.
Yeah,
they made it to the second round. I mean, if you went beyond the top 5, I think you'd really have to start delving into it.
We might have to do another show just for the top. Not the top 5, but the bottom 5.
Oh, no. We'll just do 1 through 30 or 31 for this year. Through
all
the whole
right.
league. But putting them in any sort of order would take some thinking.
I would have to agree with you on that. I mean, once you get past, I'd say, teams that didn't make the playoffs, that's when you would have to start jockeying teams around a little bit more.
I think even if you just took all the teams that lost in the first round, putting them in order,
all right,
would be pretty.
I'm with you, because let's face it, you're talking about the Predators, you're talking about the Jets, the Oilers, Bruins,
Wild, Penguins, the Capitals. Putting those teams, trying to rank them in some sort of order, you'd have to think about it.
I have to agree with you on that, man. But
that was
either
fun.
Way, dude. See, I told you that would be fun, right?
It was fun.
See, wouldn't steer you wrong, brother. Wouldn't steer you wrong. First of all, though, I do want to say this, though. Thank you very much, man, for all the work here you do at Steel Flyers, dude. This show would not be able to be as successful, as watched, and as good if it wouldn't be for all the contributions that you do and everything that you do, man, to make this happen.
My pleasure. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for all you do, man. And we are so very blessed and lucky to have such a talent as yourself as part of this team. So thank you very much, man. Really appreciate what you do.
Thank you very much. And as always, great to have you on the show. This is a fun thing to do
Wouldn't
each and
miss
every
it.
week. And another episode of the Off the Wall Hockey Show. We are approaching 30 episodes, which is wild. And we're going to have a lot more to talk about coming up as the off season kind of kicks into gear. Season's done now. Cup is awarded. Games are over. Now we're going into full off-season mode coming up. We've got a lot going on this year. Obviously, we talked about the trade market, some of the big names there. We've got the expansion draft coming up. We've got the regular draft coming up. Then we've got free agency opening. We didn't even mention free agency tonight, and we've got that opening up after the draft.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of stuff going on. I think, like I said earlier, I think it's going to be a really exciting off season for the NHL.
Yep, can't wait, and it's going to be super special, and especially because we're going to get back to more normal, where we're going to have a more normal off season. We're going to have a more normal preseason. We're going to have normal training camps, and
absolutely,
and schedule's supposed to start again in the beginning of October.
82 games and
exactly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We're going to have new TV guys, a new product is going to be out there as far as the TV is concerned.
Yeah, the presentation is going to be totally new. It's going to be awesome.
So can't wait, and we will be here on the front lines giving you all the best, man, because this is a hockey show for hockey fans.
Absolutely. It's the Off the Wall Hockey Show, a hockey show for hockey fans, part of the Steel Flyers All Sports Network. Big thank you to everybody here who watched episode 28. We'll be back next week with episode 29. Big thank you to Canine Country Club Resorts, our show sponsor and sponsor of all things Steel Flyers, and couldn't do it without them, so big thank you to them. And a big thank you to each and every one of you for watching. We could not be here without the audience. So thank you guys so much for your continued support each and every week. Hope you guys have a great weekend, and we'll be talking to you guys soon.